I want to start with a bit of a scenario for you. You are in a room with a heavyweight boxing champion and a Nobel Prize-winning physicist. If a physical fight breaks out, you obviously know who wins. If a calculus test breaks out, you know who wins that too. But life isn't usually a boxing match or a math test. It's a series of really ambiguous, messy situations. So in the real world, what actually constitutes winning? And more importantly, who is the genuinely clever person in that room?
Right, that is the eternal question, isn't it? Because we have all these metrics for intelligence, IQ, advanced degrees, net worth, but they often completely fail to predict who actually comes out on top when the pressure is really on.
Which brings us to today's deep dive. We are looking at a source material that completely upends the traditional definition of what it means to be smart. We are digging into the Kathasaritsagara.
Nailed it.
Hey, I practiced that. The Kathasaritsagara. It's this massive 11th century Indian collection of legends and folktales. And the title literally translates to the ocean of the rivers of story, which I just think is beautiful.
It really is, and it's a perfectly accurate description, too. This collection was compiled by a scholar named Somadeva, and it is immense. It's supposed to contain basically every story known to Indian culture at the time. But what makes it so fascinating for our purposes today isn't just the age or the volume, it's the psychological acuity. Like, these aren't just simple fairy tales about dragons, they are very sharp, clinical dissections of human nature.
Yeah, and we are focusing specifically on episode 17 today. It's titled The Merchant and the Mirror of Pride. And, on the surface, it sounds like a standard fable, rich guy, poor guy, a moral lessons learned at the end. But when I was reading through the source text, it felt way more like a behavioral psychology experiment than a bedtime story.
Oh, absolutely. I agree completely. It reads exactly like a modern case study on executive function and ego. You have this merchant who is our protagonist, or maybe our antagonist, depending on how you want to view him. He lives in this really prosperous town. He has vast riches. But the text explicitly notes that his defining trait is not his money, it is his pride.
Right, the exact line is, his pride was greater than his riches. That's the setup. But let me play devil's advocate here for a second. If you are a merchant in a highly competitive trade town, don't you need a little bit of an ego? You need to believe you're the best to close those deals. So is confidence the same thing as the pride this story is warning us against?
That is a crucial distinction to make early on. Confidence is knowing what you can do. Pride, at least in the specific context we're really talking about, arrogance, is assuming you know what others cannot do. The merchant genuinely believes he is cleverer than everyone else, which leads to a massive cognitive blind spot. He literally stops assessing threats accurately because he assumes he has already won the game before it even starts.
Okay, that makes sense. He's the guy who thinks he's the smartest person in the room just because his name is on the building. And then we have the challenger, a young man. No name is given in the text. He is just described as dressed simply, with a calm demeanor. Basically, he's a nobody.
A nobody to the merchant, yes. And that is the very first trap. The merchant uses a heuristic, a mental shortcut. Simple clothes equals simple mind. He underestimates this young man immediately.
So the young man walks right up to this titan of industry and asks a question that is honestly pretty bold. He just asks, "May I test your intelligence?"
Which is such a brilliant angle. Think about it. If he had asked, "May I test your strength?" the merchant would have just called for a guard. By attacking his intelligence, he targets the merchant's core identity.
And the merchant laughs. He accepts the challenge, but he laughs at him. That reaction says everything, doesn't it?
It does. It's the laugh of someone who thinks the outcome is totally predetermined. He isn't actually engaging with the young man. He is humoring him. It's like a chess grandmaster agreeing to play a toddler. He is not worried about losing. He's just wondering how long it's going to take.
So the test officially begins. The young man hands the merchant a box. We don't get a ton of physical description here in the source. Maybe it's wood, maybe it's metal, but it's small.
Yeah.
And the instructions are frustratingly simple. Rule 1, keep this safe until tomorrow. Rule 2, do not open it.
That's it. No complicated riddles, no heavy lifting, just basic impulse control.
Right, so the merchant agrees, probably just tossing it on his desk thinking, easy money. But then the sun goes down. And this is where the story shifts from a public confrontation to this really intense, private psychological thriller. The text says curiosity began to disturb him.
I love that word. Disturb. It really implies an unwanted intrusion into his mind.
But why, though? He's a grown man. He's a highly successful businessman. Why is it so incredibly hard to just not open a tiny box? I mean, I get the urge to touch a wet paint sign, but this seems extreme.
Well, you have to think about what the box actually represents in that room. It represents information asymmetry. The young man knows something that the merchant does not. For a man whose entire self-image is built on being the one who knows everything, that lack of knowledge is almost physically painful. It is the classic information gap theory of curiosity. Whenever there is a gap between what we know and what we want to know, it creates an emotional itch, and we feel absolutely compelled to scratch it.
So it isn't really about the physical object at all. It's about control.
Exactly. The box is controlling him, and as the night drags on, you can just imagine him pacing the room. The absolute silence of the house, the box just sitting there, mocking him in the candlelight, and he starts to rationalize. This is where we see cognitive dissonance kick in hard.
Break that down for us in this specific context.
Sure. So cognitive dissonance is that mental discomfort you experience when you hold two contradictory beliefs or values. So belief A is, I am a disciplined, superior man who gave his word. Belief B is, I desperately want to see what is inside that box.
And those two things cannot coexist.
Right, they cannot coexist. So his brain has to manufacture a bridge to relieve the tension. He probably starts telling himself things like, well, I'm not being weak, I'm being prudent. What if there is something dangerous inside? What if it's a raw gem that needs polishing and my expertise? I am just checking to ensure its safety.
I'm just doing my due diligence.
Precisely. He reframes the failure of his own discipline as an act of superior intelligence.
That is uncomfortably relatable. I think everyone listening has done that at some point. Like, I'm not procrastinating on my project. I'm researching via this massive YouTube rabbit hole.
It is the exact same psychological mechanism, and eventually the rationalization wins. The discipline breaks completely. He opens the box.
The moment of truth. He lifts the lid, expecting what? Gold? A poisonous snake?
Some secret map?
Probably something of immense value, something that explains why this random young man wanted it kept so safe in the first place.
But instead, it is empty.
Well, physically empty.
Right. There is a little note at the bottom.
Yeah.
And it's just 3 words. You have lost. That is such a brutal gut punch.
It's horrifying. Imagine reading that alone in your room at 2 in the morning. You have lost.
And you have to notice the timing here. He hasn't even seen the young man yet. The test was not, can you return the box unopened? The test was entirely internal. The very moment his retinas registered the bottom of that box, the defeat was absolute.
He realizes he's been completely played. The box wasn't the puzzle. He was the puzzle.
And he solved himself incorrectly. He proved that his curiosity was vastly stronger than his word. But here is where the source material pivots from a simple lesson on curiosity to a much deeper lesson on integrity. Because now, the sun comes up.
The morning after, the merchant has to actually face the young man. Now, he has a choice here. He could just hand the box back, take it on the chin, and say, you got me. I looked. Good one.
Which would be the smart move. It would show humility. It would show that he's capable of learning from a mistake.
But he doesn't do that. The young man returns and asks him one single question. Did you open the box? And the merchant looks him dead in the eye and says, no.
Why do you think he lied? Because he is clearly smart enough to know the young man might suspect him.
I think it's the sunk cost fallacy mixed with just pure ego protection. He's already spent his integrity by opening the box in the first place. He feels like if he admits it now, he loses his status completely. So he has to double down to try and preserve this image of the perfect, untouchable merchant.
That is a great analysis. He is protecting a version of himself that no longer exists. The perfect merchant died the second he lifted that lid. But by lying, he is desperately trying to resurrect him. He thinks he can bluff his way out of a metaphysical defeat.
But the young man isn't buying it. And what I love is that the young man doesn't scream at him. He doesn't call him a liar or make a huge public scene. He just drops the hammer with one quiet sentence. He says, if you had not opened it, why would you lie?
That line gives me chills every time I read it.
It's so circular and perfect. Wait, walk me through the exact logic there. How does the lie itself prove that he opened it?
Think about the merchant's demeanor. If he truly had not opened the box, he would be genuinely confused by the question. He might say, of course not, why do you ask? Or he would just hand it back with total indifference. But the lie carries weight. It carries anxiety. The young man likely saw the micro-expressions, the stiff defensive posture. But logically, you only construct a defense for a crime you actually committed. The act of defending himself was the confession.
Wow. So the lie was the final, undeniable proof of his stupidity.
Yes. The source material explicitly points out that honesty reveals true intelligence. If he had been honest, he would have lost the game, sure, but he would have kept his dignity. By lying, he lost both. He proved he was weak-willed and deceitful.
And the text notes that the merchant realized he was defeated instantly in that moment. It wasn't a debate. He just crumbled.
Because the mirror was finally held up. That is the title of the episode. The Merchant and the Mirror of Pride. That empty box was a mirror. When he looked into it, he saw his own complete lack of self-control. And when he lied about it, he saw his own lack of honor.
It's so interesting that the young man wins this massive victory without ever raising his voice or lifting a single finger. He just let the merchant beat himself.
That is the ultimate definition of soft power, or true wisdom. The young man understood human nature so much better than the merchant understood business. He knew that an arrogant man cannot stand the unknown. He weaponized the merchant's own personality against him.
So we've really got these distinct layers of analysis here. We have the arrogance that clouded his judgment from the start. We have the curiosity that lacked any discipline. And we have the lie that ultimately sealed his fate. But I want to go back to the core concept of the empty box itself, because the box was completely empty, but the loss he suffered was huge. The source refers to this as an invisible defeat.
That is a concept we should really sit with for a minute. We live in a world that is completely obsessed with visible wins and losses. Did you get the promotion? Did you buy the bigger house? Did you win the argument on social media? But this story argues that the most significant battles happen when absolutely no one is watching.
It's the battle of, do I do the right thing when there is zero chance of getting caught? Or do I stick to my word when it's highly inconvenient?
Precisely. The merchant's defeat was totally invisible to the rest of the town. He was still rich, he was still powerful. But he knew, and that internal knowledge destroys the entire foundation of his confidence. You cannot truly be confident if you know deep down in your bones that you cannot even trust yourself.
That's the self-mastery theme that the Kathasaritsagara is really driving at. True intelligence isn't about knowing facts or accumulating wealth. It is about commanding your own mind.
If you cannot control your impulses, you are just a slave to them. The merchant thought he was the master of his domain, the master of the town, but he was actually a servant to his own fleeting curiosity. The young man who owned nothing was the master of himself. And that is exactly why he won.
So how do we actually apply this? Because I don't think anyone is going to walk up and hand you a mysterious wooden box tomorrow and tell you not to look inside.
I wouldn't be so sure about that. We are handed boxes every single day.
Okay, give me an example.
Uncertainty is a box. Think about modern life. We have developed this massive intolerance for not knowing things immediately. If you send a text message and you don't get a reply right away, you spiral. Are they mad at me? Did I say something wrong? We feel this overwhelming need to open the box, to force a resolution, to double text, to aggressively check their online status.
Oh, that is so good. The silence is the empty box, and we just can't handle the silence.
Right. And what about in a professional setting? It's the sheer inability to just say, I don't know. You are in a high-stakes meeting, someone asks a really complex question. The confident, disciplined, intelligent move is to say, I'm not sure, let me find out and get back to you. That is keeping the box closed until the proper time.
But the arrogant move, the merchant move, is to bluff. To rip open the box and try to fake your way through it.
And that is exactly where the lie comes in. You make up an answer because your pride simply won't let you sit with the empty box of not knowing. And eventually, someone just like the young man will come along and ask, why did you lie? And your credibility just evaporates.
It seems like the true antidote to the merchant's massive failure is something remarkably unsexy. It is literally just sitting with discomfort.
That's it. It is the ability to sit with the itch. To let the curiosity burn without acting on it, to let the uncertainty exist without rushing to fill it with a lie or a cheap distraction. That kind of restraint is a literal superpower in the modern world.
It reminds me of that famous quote, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. That was Pascal, I think.
Blaise Pascal, exactly. The merchant couldn't sit quietly with the box, and because of that, he lost everything that mattered.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I am really thinking about the empty boxes in our own lives right now.
Yeah.
We all have them.
We definitely do.
Maybe it's a difficult conversation you're avoiding. Maybe it's a metric at work you're ignoring because you know the numbers are bad. But you're just pretending everything is fine.
Or maybe it's an area where you're feigning expertise. You are clutching this box, terrified that someone is going to ask you to open it and reveal to the room that there is absolutely nothing inside.
That brings us to our final thought for you to take away today. We watched the merchant lose everything, not his money, but his fundamental self-respect, simply because he couldn't handle an empty box.
He tried to protect his pride rather than facing the stark reality of his own limitations.
So here's the question we want you to carry with you after you finish listening today. What empty box are you currently